Transformers story tape. Sit back and relax. Now it's time to start our first exciting Transformers story. Here we go with Satellite of Doom. Megatron, the evil Decepticon leader, stood on the observation deck inside the tremendous 200-square-mile cavern. It had been hollowed out beneath the fiery surface of Africa's Kalahari Desert. Next to him was his aide, Soundwave. The din of monstrous earth-moving machinery working forced them to yell. How much longer are we going to have to stay under this merciless desert, Master? Yelled Soundwave. As long as it takes to complete our task here. Megatron snarled. Asking, Master, because this blasted sand keeps getting in my cassette drives and it's fouling everybody else's transmissions too. Well, us Decepticons at least. That is why we have lured these thousands of greedy carbon-based humanoids here to perform the excavation and loading of the chamber for us there, using false promises of vast wealth and then making them our slaves. Ironically amusing. It's certainly one of your better jokes, all-powerful Megatron. Moments later, the roaring turbine drives of another huge Decepticon coal transporter filled the air as it ended its long journey. As the tons of coal spilled out, slaves worked like ants, bulldozing it to those parts of the chamber not yet packed from floor to ceiling. What volume of coal is inside now? Megatron demanded. 400 billion cubic yards, Master. It's the largest single concentration of coal on this planet. Only 2 more loads to go and then we can proceed with the next phase of my plan. Are the lecternite charges in place in Prime? Well, Master, almost. You see the sand and transmission problems. Almost? Everything will be completed on time, mighty Megatron. The entire cavern will be filled within a cocoon of lecternite explosives, just as you ordered. Your worthless mega-life depends on that, Soundwave. Skyfire, the Autobot Air Guardian, screamed in low over the lifeless figure lying on the desert floor, and then shot straight up into the sky. Skyfire's coded signal filled the Autobot Command Center, where an impatient Optimus Prime, the fearless Autobot leader, and his right hand, Prowl, listened intently. The Decepticons are out there somewhere, Prowl. I know it. We tracked their transport to the area until it disappeared from our screens. What vicious scheme can the evil Megatron be hatching now? Perhaps that Earthling lying out there holds the answer, Chief. He's totally unconscious and beyond answering questions. Not once the sensor drone reaches him and patches into his residual brainwave pattern. At that, the computer sprang to life, and the printer began spitting out the results. Optimus Prime was puzzled. Slaves? A 200-square-mile block of coal? What for? As the Decepticon command ship blasted off, its enormous rocket drives created a dust storm the size of a large city. The lights from the control console cast an eerie glow across the evil impassivity of Megatron's face. At least we no longer have to listen to the vile curses and screaming from those pathetic slaves, he announced to Soundwave. No, Master. They certainly weren't happy about being left sealed up with all that coal. The slaves' carbon base will soon join the carbon base of the coal, thus creating the largest legs in the universe. Normally it would have taken millions of Earth years and multi-tons of pressure to form the diamond I need. But with my genius and the force of the tons of lecternite, I shall create that crystal at the press of a button. And with that, Megatron released an explosion, the force of which the world had never seen, not even in its most powerful H-bomb. The explosion left in its wake the largest diamond ever formed. Attack anti-gravity lifters and secure crystal for towing, Soundwave. Roger, Master. The Decepticon satellite launching complex lay isolated deep in the steaming jungles of Brazil's Mato Grosso. Megatron supervised the final laser cuts for the refraction surfaces on the monstrous diamond satellite. T-minus 10 minutes to launch, Soundwave. Why are you looking so grim? The humidity, Master. My cassette drives. It's as bad as the sand from the desert. Have no fear. Soon we Decepticons will have all the oil we need to bathe and protect our drive and transmission. I cannot wait for each tiny puddle of oil on this miserable planet to fall into our hands. Therefore, with my crystal satellite, I shall have a lens powerful enough to focus the puny energy of that tiny sun and melt the entire mountain range they call the Rockies, turning it into an ocean of oil. And from that oil, my refineries will supply us with the fuel for the final defeat of the Autobots and the conquest of the universe. But as Megatron spoke, he failed to notice Bumblebee, the hovering Autobot spy, surveying their activity. First, the rumble of pre-ignition began on the giant Decepticon crystal satellite propulsion vehicle. Then, the main ignition kicked in with a blast that sent shockwaves reverberating along the ground and through the jungle foliage and air alike. But as the launch vehicle began to rise, a superjet appeared. Attack, brave Autobot Skyfire! Attack! Optimus Prime ordered over the command channel, breaking radio silence. Destroy Megatron and this newest tool of his evil imagination! The explosive fury of Skyfire's null rays and missiles was too late, however, as the launch vehicle shrugged them off and rose up through the atmosphere into space. Optimus Prime, you have met your match! Megatron gloated as he detonated an explosive charge, destroying the launch complex. Then he and the Decepticons punched in their afterburners and made a strategic withdrawal to await the fruits of their foul plan. Never before had the Earth been so vulnerable and unsuspecting. And it was all a result of the diabolic design of the villainous leader of the Decepticons, Megatron. Having launched an enormous diamond lens satellite into space over the North American continent, he was now preparing to fix its position so he could bring the full extent of the sun's energy to bear and melt the Rocky Mountains into an ocean of oil. That oil would be used to fuel his corrupt pursuit of universal domination. Therefore, buried deep inside a remote location in Northeast America, Megatron and Soundwave concentrated at the controls in the Decepticon ground station as they made the final adjustments to the satellite. 2-second burn on the starboard attitude thruster, Megatron ordered. Roger, Master. Shut down all engines. Roger. All engines shut down at this time. No, the satellite lens is in a fixed orbit over its target when the first rays of the sun strike it. The fun will begin. In the Autobot Command Center, Optimus Prime and Prowl were also monitoring these last movements of the Decepticon satellite as it assumed its stationary position far out in space.
That's it, Chief. Looks like they're on station. They've shut down all rocket engines.
Curious.
Here comes the sun. But wait! Look, Chief! The refraction facets of the lens are beginning to focus a beam of sunlight.
Optimus Prime interrupted with shock and disbelieving horror, understanding suddenly and full well the terrible weight of the consequences of Megatron's fiendish plan.
The energy of hundreds of millions of hydrogen bombs concentrated on a confined area like that is going to precipitate disastrous and deadly results.
That's a lot of heat, all right, Chief.
Millions will perish in the ensuing calamity of Megatron's debased thinking.
As the first scorching rays of the satellite's beam began to sear the mountains, the surface temperature of the ground jumped upward 10 times 1,000-fold. Entire forests immediately burst into violent flames, and tons of smoke and soot began to rain down on the continent. Then the rocks began to liquefy, slowly at first, secreting the moisture held tightly for eons within the granite and shale. Finally, sweating out the first signs of the precious black fluid so dear to Megatron's callous heart. Then the heat factor began to soar at a rate beyond imagination, and the last bastion of geologic formation wilted before it, changing from a solid state to a liquid. Streams of gaseous molten lava and oil flowed into rivers and then formed into lakes. The expanding sea of death threatened to engulf Los Angeles and the entire West Coast. At an ever-increasing speed, it also began moving eastward, menacing small desert towns as its volume doubled and redoubled. Not possessing the perfect weapon needed to destroy the satellite, and not having the luxury of time to come up with a variety of solutions, Optimus Prime quickly improvised. The lens was beyond Skyfire's range, because the fuel necessary to reach it was more than he could carry. But with Ratchet's mechanical wizardry, he was prepared to try something.
Isn't Skyfire ready, Prowl? What's holding things up?
Ratchet's good, Chief, but he's only mechanical. Skyfire will be online as soon as Ratchet has the auxiliary booster tanks attached to the fuel dome. That's it, Chief. Ratchet just gave me the go-ahead.
Launch them! Immediately!
The Autobot Air Guardian roared into space, knowing he would not have enough fuel to return safely from his mission. And at his fuel limit, he released a barrage of null rays and missiles that concentrated in a mighty display of explosive power. In the Decepticon ground station, Megatron slapped Soundwave across the back so hard in a fit of glee that he almost popped Soundwave's cassette right out of his chest.
Did you see that? Not a scratch, not even close. They cannot touch us. Optimus Prime, prepare to meet your mechanic. Absolutely all-powerful Megatron. And did you see how the Autobot superjet burned on re-entry into the atmosphere? That was nice too.
But although time and options were limited, Optimus Prime still had a card up his sleeve. He had instructed Ratchet to weld together a square-mile sheet of polished metal. And now, using electromagnetic lift, a squadron of Autobots was flying the metal sheet into position between the satellite lens and its focal point on the Earth's surface.
Look, Mighty Megatron.
Soundwave said in a confused manner as he pointed at the video monitor.
The Autobots are up to something funny with that giant metal mirror. Oh, busted gears and cracked drive shafts.
Megatron screamed as the mirror intercepted the satellite's beam and bounced it spaceward again. The moment the reversed beam struck the satellite, it instantly exploded into millions of crystal shards with a force so tremendous that tides on Earth were raised 10 feet. And using a fix from Megatron's last desperate instructions to his creation, Optimus Prime launched an all-out attack of Autobots on the Decepticon ground station. Using special thermo-excavator missiles, they peeled open Megatron's underground lair like a tin can.
Optimus Prime, you metallic nemesis!
Megatron roared in his exposed fury.
One day I will remove the yoke of your existence from around my neck. I shall erase your very mechanical limits. the face of the universe.
Master, quickly, into the turbine mole machine.
Megatron and Soundwave drove deep into the Earth in their escape, leaving only the tailings of the borehole and destruction behind them for the first Autobot scouts to find. For the moment, the planet was safe again. But the battle continues.
Now it's time for our second action-packed Transformers story. Are you ready for adventure? Here we go with When Continents Collide.
At first, the sound was barely perceptible, and the herd of caribou paid no attention. They were grazing on the small plants growing near the isolated pump relay station on the Alaska pipeline. But the sound grew, and with it, what was only a speck on the horizon became a colossus that dominated the vast northern sky. It was a hovercraft oil transporter that was bigger than 200 super tankers put together. High on the command bridge of the transporter stood Megatron, the evil Decepticon leader, observing the docking with his cold, stony stare, and realizing full well how valuable this oil transporter, stolen from the Earthlings, would be to him.
Stabilize the ship, then shut down power.
Megatron growled to Soundwave, his communications aide. Huge pilings emerged from the belly of the hovercraft and drove their metal footpads through the surface ooze down to the frozen soil below.
Stabilized now and shutting down power.
Soundwave said.
Can the idle chatter?
Megatron snarled.
I've got the attitude sensors.
The big fans revolved to a stop.
Well, where's the contact? Where's that pathetic carbon-based slime who helped us steal the transporter and who has now agreed to aid us in siphoning off tons of this Pluto-based crude? I don't know why I bothered. I can't wait. Soundwave, activate the laser order for a direct tap into the line itself.
Master, I think your original reasoning is still the most valid plan of action.
My original reasoning?
Yes, mighty Megatron. By bribing this Earthling, we will have an ally, one who will allow us to return here repeatedly and drain load after load of oil without anyone else being wiser.
You know, sometimes my cunning amazes even me. Continue operations as planned.
Yes, Master.
Giant winches ground powerfully. A gangway clanged open, and a ramp extended down to the ground. A huge loading hose snaked out of its port and was grabbed by two Decepticons who coupled the end of it to a station outlet valve. The Earthling who stepped out of the relay station to check on the operation glanced briefly at the transporter, then turned and went back inside.
That fool is valuable to us only so long as he is useful.
Said Megatron after the man had disappeared.
Yes, Master.
And when he is no longer,
I understand, Master.
what worthless trinket was it that induced this betrayal of his people?
Desire for a new chief, mighty Megatron.
As that very jeep was being unloaded from the transporter, the Decepticons were totally unaware that they were being infiltrated by an undercover Autobot spy. It was Hound in his earthly mode as a jeep.
Increase the flow rate of the oil, Soundwave.
Megatron snarled.
But, Master,
I have no more patience. I want it all. Now, faster, faster. My warriors need every drop of that lovely black juice to bathe their gears and fuel their engines. Total domination of the universe cannot wait unfold.
Megatron.
As the enraged Earthling rushed out of the relay station, waving frantically to try to stop the speed-up, Megatron roared with laughter, then flattened him with an ion stun field from his fusion cannon. Farther south, in Valdez, Alaska, the terminus of the pipeline, the oil flow slowed to a trickle, then stopped. The oil company immediately sent out emergency signals, which were monitored by Prowl at Autobot Field headquarters.
Chief, the Decepticons have finally broken cover.
Prowl informed Optimus Prime, the brave and wise Autobot leader.
Excellent work, Prowl. Where are they?
Somewhere along the Alaska pipeline.
That's the best you can do? The pipeline is hundreds of miles long.
With the sketchy information at hand, Chief, I'm lucky to... Wait a minute. I'm receiving something. Yes, it's Hound's signal, coming in strong and clear.
Above the Arctic Circle, the enormous oil transporter skimmed swiftly northward over the ice, its harbor fans thundering and throwing up white plumes of snow. Skyfire, the Autobot superjet that appeared high in the slate-gray sky, reported its sighting of the Decepticon hovercraft to headquarters.
Commence attack!
Optimus Prime ordered over the command frequency. The superjet dove quickly, catching the Decepticons by surprise and unleashing a hail of heat-seeking missiles and null rays.
That's seeking Autobot junkie!
Megatron raged.
Retaliate immediately!
Megatron brought the full force of his terrible fusion cannon to bear, but Skyfire managed to avoid every blast.
Do something!
Screamed Megatron.
Wait!
Soundwave yelled excitedly.
According to their transmissions, Mighty Megatron, the jet has only enough fuel to remain over the target for a few more minutes.
But those few minutes were long enough for Skyfire to release another barrage of missiles, null rays, and explosions. They ripped through the transporter from stem to stern. Its giant fans locked up tight and fused into useless lumps of metal. The huge ship bellied in hard on the ice.
We rust attack every joint in that miserable metal body.
Megatron roared.
Let's prevent ship master.
Soundwave urged. Outnumbered, and with common sense the better part of valor, the Decepticons prepared to flee their fire-consumed transporter.
Activate the hypersource afterburners!
Megatron ordered.
Fire!
It was a foolish consumption of precious fuel, but necessary for escape from their Autobot pursuers. For the moment. Once again, the Decepticons had eluded the righteous grasp of their Autobot pursuers and survived to wreak havoc another day. Leaving their oil transporter behind, a raging inferno on the ice, they had escaped capture and disappeared into the vast frozen reaches at the top of planet Earth. In the dimness of the Autobot Communications Center, the numerous video monitors cast a greenish glow. Prowl studied one monitor carefully as Optimus Prime stood at his shoulder.
Well, Prowl?
Optimus Prime urged.
I can't tell. It may have just been an isolated blip. But I'm never going to be able to do this if you insist on hovering over me, Chief.
I don't understand. We set up that sensor drone days ago. The Decepticons are out there somewhere.
We'll find them, Chief. And remember, Hound is still at work, too.
Well, losing that oil transporter and its fuel load should have slowed down the Decepticons.
Meanwhile, hidden deep in an ice cave, Megatron surveyed the feverish activity in his northernmost systems development center and fuel refinery.
Well, Soundwave,
He demanded.
how soon will it be ready? And I don't want to hear any more excuses.
Our master, remember, this is a highly sophisticated piece of machinery we've stolen from the Earthlings. This multi-tracked, deep-sea oil transporter, and we've made it even more sophisticated by adding external laser-powered drilling capability and enough capacity to handle the total volume of the Prud'ho Bay Reservoir.
Easily withstanding the frigid temperature and crushing pressure at the vast depths beneath the Arctic Ocean, Megatron's monster transporter clawed its way across the seabed. Soundwave monitored the computer analyzer and listened intently to the sonar probe returning its data. He looked up and announced,
"This is it, mighty Megatron. This is the perfect spot to begin drilling operations. It's the reservoir's lowest point, so all the oil will flow back here as we siphon off, putting less stress on our suction drives."
What are you waiting for then, Soundwave? Commence drilling immediately.
The huge drilling arm telescoped out from its travel lock, and the enormous suction tube piggybacked it like some overgrown sea serpent. Then there was a blinding flash, and the concentrated heat of the laser bit turned the water around it into thousands of gaseous bubbles. Far above, the oil pressure on the hundreds of oil rigs in the Prud'ho Bay field began dropping. Then the oil stopped flowing completely. Confusion reigned on all the rigs. Once again, the Valdez terminus ran dry. Confusion turned to apprehension at the headquarters of all the world's oil companies. Soon, a real reason for panic arose. The reservoir, practically drained of all its oil, began collapsing in on itself. This was followed by huge sections of continental plates shifting and starting to move together. Northern Siberia slowly approached Alaska. Earthquakes shook the planet from pole to pole. A huge crack opened from the Arctic Ocean to the Yukon, and the icy waters rushed in. Volcanoes, long dormant, erupted on both sides of the Pacific Ocean. With the enormous loss and destruction, both Russia and the West looked to place blame, each certain that the other had caused this catastrophe for their own ends. Threats on both sides became stronger, and the world stood on the brink of thermonuclear war. The entire fuel supply of the planet was threatened with radioactive contamination. Only the Autobots could save the Earth, but they would have to act quickly. All Autobot eyes were on Optimus Prime. Only his vast knowledge and resources could stop the disaster threatening the planet Earth. A disaster that was very much like the one that had befallen his beloved Cybertron.
Prowl, have you found out where the Decepticons are pumping from yet?
No, Chief. The underwater sensor drone can work only so fast.
We cannot wait any longer. But I have an idea, a solution, and it may help us flush those mechanical rats from their hole as well.
What's that, Chief?
Liquefied Raison gas.
Of course!
Prowl exclaimed. Optimus Prime continued.
In its liquid state, Raison possesses a greater density than crude oil. Therefore, if we pump it into the empty reservoir, it will force the oil now in the Decepticon transporter back into the reservoir and restore the Earth's geography to its former state.
And its liquid half-life is only a matter of hours. Then it becomes a gas again.
Exactly, Prowl. A gas that should force that Decepticon oil guzzler to the surface of the ocean to face
Our missile!
Do something!
Megatron demanded.
I'm trying, Master, I'm trying.
Soundwave exclaimed as he pushed and pulled every combination of buttons and levers that were available to him. But nothing worked. The transporter was surfacing, and nothing was going to stop that.
Surface in 5 seconds, Master.
You blundering, confused idiot!
It's the gas, mighty Megatron. It's the Raison gas that's doing it.
Reasons of excuses! I want results!
We're surface now, mighty Megatron.
to make his move, but there was only silence from the floating oil transporter. However, an Autobot boarding party encountered a time-delay booby trap attached to the deck hatchway. When it went off, 2 members of the boarding party were sent back to visit Ratchet for repairs. Inside the transporter, the other Autobots discovered that the Decepticon command module pod was gone. Once more, Megatron had managed to elude a just fate. But he had left his message across the screen of an idling computer monitor whose voice readout kept repeating,
A Decepticon universe is at hand. A Decepticon universe is at hand.
and the battle continues.